Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and welcome back to yet another edition of the #1 show. Playing catch up from weeks gone by from while I've been on hiatus, catching us up to this current week. I've got 8 new books for you, or at least they were new a couple weeks ago at the point that this comes out, and a lot of these of course will still be available at your comic shop, and this should help give you an idea of things you might want to hunt down and look for, maybe stuff you didn't even know about. As I am going through brand new #1s every week, I'm reading things that I never would have considered checking out before I did this show. So glad I'm doing this, finding it very educational and enlightening, and giving me a really good sense of what's going on in comics right now. I want to say thanks to Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas, as always, for helping us out with the show. If you are ever in the Kansas City area, be sure and check them out. They are absolutely fantabulous, and we sure appreciate everything they do for us here on Geekvolution. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Like I said, I've got quite a bit. Let's start off with some new books from DC, shall we? As we have talked very little about DC the last few videos. Been a whole lot of mostly independent stuff, and even some underground things, and not a whole lot of #1s from the big two. This time, it's not #1s, but standalone stories, or at the very least, at least in one case, a story that is maybe sort of a jumping-on point. It is kind of overblown annual day here on the #1 show, and I will try not to be a broken record, but I feel like a lot of my problems with these annuals tend to be sort of the same across the board. Weirdly, a lot of these have a lot of the same issue, and really the big thing, yeah, I said issues, a couple things. The big one is simply not warranting page count. Let's go ahead and start into it with Batman Arkham Knight, the annual, and you know, annual #1, but I mean, I'll be really surprised if there's any more of these moving forward, unless, you know, this goes into a second year. I guess it's possible that, you know, they'll milk this for all it's worth, given that the Arkham series is, you know, allegedly finished now. This is written by Peter Tomasi with art by Steven Segoria, and of course, as I said, the big issue I have with this, and I'm having with these issues across the board this time for these annuals for the most part, is just stretched out too much. It's been a problem I've had with DC a lot lately. It seems like in dealing with financial woes, or maybe even honestly before DC realized how much trouble they were in, there was kind of just this sense of one of the ways to try to keep revenues up is to make longer comics to try to justify a bigger price tag. So we can't really just slap a $5 price tag on everything all of a sudden, because the rest of the industry isn't doing that yet. But what we can do is add a few pages and then make it seem warranted, because you know, it doesn't cost all that much more money from a production standpoint. It doesn't cost that much more money for print anyway, just for the you know, physical object to put a few more pages in the book. I guess, you know, how much you have to pay your writers and artists per page, whatever the contract is like, that's maybe another story. But in my opinion, that's been it seems like a marketing strategy more than just occasionally having books that have stories that need more pages. I felt like that really hard with the first couple of issues of Convergence, and was kind of surprised they didn't do that all the way through with that. But these annuals are all $5 annuals, and that would be fine, of course, if there were just bigger stories that warranted that. But a lot of it is kind of padding it out with a lot of splash pages, and frankly, just more words than are necessary to tell a story. So basically, what Tomasi is doing here is chronicling the initial team up between Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight that informs that game. So of course in that game you've got this team up between those two characters, and this is letting you know how that happened in the first place. And most of this is a fear toxin induced hallucination for Arkham Knight. It's kind of a test by Scarecrow to see if he's ready for what they're about to undertake, and it's trying to kind of get into the mind of Arkham Knight and his past with Batman and all of that. And of course, if you've played the game and you know who that is, you know what it is that we're talking about and what that past is. I won't give that away just in case there's still some people that haven't gotten through the game yet, but it doesn't really give us a lot of new insight into this character, I don't think. But I guess the idea that his greatest fear is the truth is kind of interesting. This idea that, and I think that plays okay within the ideas of that character and the themes of the game. The idea of his questioning his own relevance and whether or not he's really ever amounted to anything. Of course, that parallels what Batman's character arc is in that game to a degree. But with Arkham Knight, it's this idea that he never really mattered. His life was kind of a waste before he became the Arkham Knight, and the truth always ultimately wins out. But he recognizes that, but he's afraid of it. So the idea of this whole hallucination is that he gets over his fear, and his fear is the truth. So the implications of that, of course, are kind of scary. As far as the writing in this, the big problem with it is that there's this, because those ideas are fine, but the problem is it's so heavy-handed and really thrown in your face kind of hard. And again, maybe that wouldn't have been so much of that wouldn't have been there so hard had there not been this increased page count and it was padded out. But there's this repeated phrase over and over again that's used for different things, but again, mainly this idea that the truth wins out is and forgive the slight swear, every damn time. And I got really sick of that. Is over and over again beating your head with it beating you over the head with it to the point where I felt kind of numbed by it and stopped trying to figure out if it really meant anything anymore in each of the contexts that it was used. I just got so sick of reading it that after a while it got almost cutesy and almost kind of like sing-songy and nursery rhymey. It was weird. The big reason to pick this up, I think, is the art. I think there's a lot of really cool. I complained that it's padded out with full-page spreads, but then some of them are kind of neat. It's kind of your standard contemporary comic art, and it's not, super detailed or anything, but there's some neat things done with the hallucination. I like the classic Joker with the top hat and all of that. That's really cool. And I really enjoy, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, the kind of obligatory couple-page spread of the Batman tribute. Let's draw every version of Batman we can think of on a page. The idea of throwing Batman Beyond in there is interesting from a character standpoint with Arkham Knight. This idea that that might represent what he could have been. Again, even if it doesn't make really any sense that he would hallucinate specifically that Batman, but he also hallucinates Michael Keaton, so, whatever. Overall, I don't know if I would recommend this unless you... Unless frankly you just buy your Batman comics more for art than anything, but also if you're really into that game and you haven't been reading the Arkham Knight comics, I think that this is one that's certainly easy to pick up and read, and you might get a little bit out of it. But as I said, just be forewarned. There's that repeated phrase over and over again that just might get on your nerves like it did mine. Moving right along to another Batman Annual. This is Batman Annual number 4, and this is written by James Tynion IV. This is not a Scott Snyder story. Is dealing with some things, of course, that Scott Snyder has set up, with art by Roge Antonio. I liked this a lot, actually, and this is one that I think is wordier than it has to be, but was paced a lot better than the Arkham Knight Annual and didn't feel nearly as much like it was too padded out. Obviously, this was assigned. You've got to write, you know, an extra 8 or 10 pages or whatever this time for your annual, and I just feel like Tynion did maybe a little bit of a better job with filling that space with substance. So the idea here is kind of neat. It's Bruce Wayne. Of course, the status quo right now, if you're not familiar, is Bruce Wayne is not himself because he has after the events of, or at the end of Endgame, after all those events with the Joker, Batman died in the sense that Bruce Wayne lost all of his memories, including the memory of being Batman and how that happened in the first place. He doesn't even remember his parents being killed. So of course he's told a lot of things, and I guess he doesn't even know that that he was ever Batman, or at least that's sure how it reads here, which is kind of an interesting reversal, honestly. I mean, I'm usually not a big fan of amnesia stories, but the way Snyder has been writing that, I have found kind of compelling, and frankly, especially after reading this, I wish we could have just this really low-key, character-driven, not even all that action-oriented Batman book for like a year, sort of like Zero Year was, just in that format, and just focus on Bruce Wayne and maybe his. I don't know if this is where we're going with all this, but there were hints of it here, focusing on this potential idea that Bruce Wayne will become Batman again because that's just who he is, even regardless of not remembering his parents' murder, because if Bruce Wayne were to know about that and he is somehow still naturally the man he always was, it would be really cool to see that and to not have to focus on Gordon in the Bat suit, which I think is, and I've said this before, but I think is forced and unnatural and is just not really working all that well. So anyway, what's going on in this annual is Bruce Wayne finally gets his house back. Arkham Manor is dismantled, and or is in the process of being dismantled, and Bruce goes back to his house, and of course it's sort of an unfamiliar place to him, and he says, this is not my house, this is Bruce Wayne's house, and I am not that person anymore. But again, there are hints that he kind of still is, and that he's going to end up working toward that. And what ends up happening is that there are 3 inmates that are still around and were the hardest, or potentially the hardest to contain, and indeed found a way to escape and stay there, and they put Bruce Wayne through his paces because they want revenge on him. And I get the sense in this that they maybe know that he's Batman, or at least that the Riddler does, and help me out if there's something that I missed in some series or some comic somewhere where more people know about that than I realize. Maybe Arkham Manor did something with it, where because they're in Bruce Wayne's house they found out. I'm not sure, but it's left kind of ambiguous in this as to whether or not they know, and these villains play it like Bruce Wayne has done something horrible to them, but they never really come out and say you were Batman. And part of that might be if one, I would assume if any of them knew it was the Riddler, as I said. But I feel like that if any of them do know for sure that he's Bruce Wayne, they're not telling, or that he was Batman, they're not telling because that's a reveal that's just not supposed to happen yet. But anyway, so it's the Riddler and Clayface and Mr. Freeze. And I think that those are all three really cool picks because they kind of in the story represent different parts of the original Bruce Wayne's, you know, before he lost his memory, personality as Batman. So the Riddler, of course, is his intelligence and his ability to problem solve. And then you have Clayface, which is his theatricality, and you have Mr. Freeze, which is his kind of cold exterior that's hiding his deep emotion, which is what really drives him, even though he likes to think of it as of himself as completely unemotional and not driven by his emotions. And I think it's really cool to put those three together, trying to get revenge on the man who they say made them who they are. And what I think is really interesting about all that is this idea that each of them, except for the Riddler, and it kind of comes off as a joke, but the other two kind of come out and say, this is what we could have been if it hadn't been for you. You've caused more harm than good. And of course, that's a big thing in Batman stories, especially modern Batman stories. Does Batman belong in the asylum? That's why it's kind of an interesting idea, even if you think it's hokey, to put the asylum in Wayne Manor. But also, does Batman has he caused more problems than he solved? And if he had left well enough alone, would the world be better for it? And this Bruce Wayne might have reason to kind of think that himself a little bit. Anyway, as I said, I really liked this. It's kind of a neat sort of almost kind of haunted house tale. Again, inside of Bruce Wayne's house, but it being kind of a foreign place to him. I think that's really cool. It's like I said, it's a little bit wordier than it has to be, but it is a good one and done story, and it seems kind of important for what's going on right now with Bruce Wayne. It informs who this kind of new Bruce Wayne is a lot, but it certainly is probably skippable in the grand scheme, but would be a really good thing to read if you're not familiar with what's going on with Batman right now, and it doesn't explain that stuff in a cumbersome way. It kind of just jumps you in, and then you'll be, okay, this is the status quo right now, as bizarre as it might seem. So anyway, I am definitely recommending this one. I liked it quite a bit. And next up, I'm going to go to Grayson Annual number 2. This is, I'm reviewing all these annuals because they are, mostly one-and-done things, and it kind of fits for the #1 show. But every now and again, or often, I suppose, I'll be reviewing things from series that I haven't been keeping up with, or things that I tried at one point and didn't really care for a lot. I've not been a giant fan of this whole Dick Grayson as a super spy thing, mostly just because I didn't really buy the way his identity was outed and everything, and wasn't a huge fan of that choice. It was just a personal taste issue back in Forever Evil, but also that whole thing was really weird because I still don't understand how you out Dick Grayson's identity, but somehow rather Bruce Wayne's remains intact. I don't understand that. And clearly it's not remaining all that well intact, but in the larger scheme, it is. Whatever. Anyway, so Grayson Annual number 2. This is written by Tim Seeley with art by Alvern Martinez. This is a really mixed bag. I like things about it, but overall, the storytelling, once again, kind of heavy-handed, actually pretty heavy-handed, overwritten. And I guess I'll start with the positives. So you've got Superman working with Dick Grayson and exploring why that's actually a really logical pairing, but also how these men have changed and how they are kind of just guys. And that's the name of the story, is if memory serves, I think that's what it is. Just a guy. Okay, so, and the idea there is kind of exploring the idea of legends and the perception of these heroes as larger than life and gods versus who they really are, and the fact that they're just human beings, or in Superman's case, basically a human being but from another planet, and how they're flawed people just like the rest of us, just trying to do the right thing. And this is a good time to tell a story like that, because Superman, of course, doesn't have all of his powers right now, and he's a lot more mortal than he ever has been. He bleeds quite a bit in this. I like Superman and Dick Grayson together. I think it's kind of neat that Dick is in this played as kind of the universal sidekick, that because he is so optimistic and positive, but also because he was trained by Batman, he works really well as Batman's sidekick or Superman's sidekick. That they have that in common, that they see the world in a little bit more of a lot more of a positive light than Batman does. But he was great for Batman because he helped to ground Batman, because Batman was so cynical. That positive worldview was very important for Batman, and it gives a really good argument for why Batman needs a sidekick, but I really like him with Superman also, because even though they have that in common, the other thing that's kind of neat is this idea that if Superman had a sidekick that was a human, it might help to ground him a little bit in the sense of remembering everyone else's mortality, not in the sense of like he constantly gets into trouble and so Superman has to go save him, but just to kind of remind him that he's not doing this just because he's invulnerable. And now, of course, he's not invulnerable, and they're kind of sizing each other up and learning these new things about each other. The just a guy thing is kind of thrown in our face, and we're hit over the head with a little bit like that phrase in Arkham Knight, in the Arkham Knight Annual I was talking about, but that's less of an issue than the way Superman and Grayson and Dick Grayson are talking to each other in this. Like I said, sometimes the banter is good. I like their dynamic together, but the problem with it is that most of the issue is, and again, part of this is probably padding to make it a $5 issue, is this weird, it's so counterintuitive and bizarre to me. The whole thing, there is a story told, but the whole thing feels like 30-something pages of recap. Like it's just Superman explaining stuff that he's done recently to Dick Grayson, and then Dick Grayson explaining stuff he's done recently to Superman, and it doesn't naturally catch you up. The whole thing is, it's almost like a really badly written Marvel .1, where it's, I guess DC's have those now too. But it's like a badly written .1, where it's like, we just wanted to write an issue to catch people up to speed on both of these characters. Or the way it reads is, you need all of that context in order to understand what's going on, and you just don't. And some of it's just not all that complicated, and Seeley's just going too far with the details, I think. And sometimes it's also really inconsistent, because one of the things that these two guys have in common right now that's really interesting is that both their secret identities have been outed. And so like how does that inform both of them? How do each of them, what are the similarities and differences in how they cope with that? Well, the problem is, it's a foregone conclusion that both of them know that Dick Grayson's identity has been outed, and Superman is surprised that he's still alive. He's like, "Yeah, you're still alive." And that was fun and kind of heartwarming. But the problem is, there's one page where it seems pretty clear. It seems, and I went back and looked at it again, and it still reads that way, that Dick is perfectly aware that Superman's identity has been outed too. Because he's Superman, and it's public knowledge, right? And then a couple pages later, he suddenly doesn't know that. He's surprised by it when Superman tells him about it, and I don't understand that at all. So yeah, it's a really weird issue, and I'm also not entirely sure about the way Lex Luthor plays in this, but I like some things about that. I don't know. As I said, it's a mixed bag. This is actually a pairing that I could see getting their own book. I could totally see Superman and Dick Grayson, while Superman doesn't have his powers, fighting together for a lot. I think they complement each other really well. I think that they check each other really well, and I like the dynamic, but I'd like to see it under a slightly less heavy-handed pen. Next up, the last annual I wanted to talk about, and this one will be brief, the Green Lantern Annual number 4. This is written by Robert Venditti with art by Pascal Alexa and Martin Kokolo. The art in this, I should mention, because it's by 2 different artists, is kind of inconsistent. It's really weird that it suddenly has an artist shift at the end, because it goes from this kind of more gritty, brooding, really pencil-y art to something a lot more kind of standard for Green Lantern, and that was just jarring and strange to me. I didn't really care for the art in this most of the way through with the first guy, just because initially, just because it seems so counterintuitive to what's being drawn, but then it does fit the themes and the overall kind of broodiness of the issues. So I think it's kind of the choices of just having so much of the bright, vibrant emerald green, but in this really understated, drab, kind of dreary art style is a little bit strange. Maybe it's supposed to be, though. Maybe the idea is the world has got, the universe is in dire straits right now, and is bleak and feels really hopeless because the Green Lantern Corps is out of commission, and Hal Jordan seems to be, we discover in this, there's a big reveal that this is not exactly the case, that Hal Jordan seems to have gone off the deep end and hurt all of his friends, and that he's kind of gone rogue, and everybody's after him, both cops and criminals. I think maybe what I would have done with it is drawn the flashbacks differently, and then maybe just had that kind of drab, gritty thing in the present. What this seems to be doing, and by the way, I have not been reading Green Lantern, so this is my first foray into Green Lantern probably since, besides stuff in Red Lanterns, which catches up every now and again about some Green Lantern stuff, but certainly not everything. Really, the first Green Lantern thing I've read since the beginning of 52. So take my opinions with a grain of salt, because they're not informed by what's been going on lately. I just read this. If you've not been reading Green Lantern, this might be a good jumping on point to kind of catch you up to speed on what's been going on with the weirdness with Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. I feel like I really understand the status quo right now, so it's really good for that. But this is not a one-and-done story all told in one issue. It's definitely in the middle of a thing, and there's a cliffhanger, and it's continuing on a story. But anyway, so what this reads like basically is, what if Hal Jordan became Batman? Basically, because it's all about perception and manipulating people's perceptions of you to create a reputation in order to try to inspire people to do whatever it is you want them to do. And Hal Jordan's heart is in the right place. I may be giving away too much by saying this, but this is the crux of the story. And frankly, the first several pages are completely unnecessary and should have been just totally written out. This is paced well and doesn't read padded. It simply kind of starts before the story starts and has stuff at the beginning that I just didn't need and wasn't interested in. And then once we started getting into what was really going on with Hal Jordan, then I was interested. So yeah, some of those other ones, some of those other annuals, I would actually like truncate. This, I just chop the first 6 pages off, and then you've got a basically regular sized comic that is paced normally and is decently written, in my opinion. I don't know if I love what's going on in this, but it's decently well executed. Decently well. Yeah, it's well executed. Anyway, but the reason I say that is, like, what if Hal Jordan was Batman, is that the idea is Hal Jordan is trying to create this perception that he is really dangerous and even has murdered his friends, and he is trying to create this. He's trying to help people to be independent and to not rely on organizations like the Green Lantern Corps. And so while we've got these, so like he's trying to be an inspiration like Batman, and using intimidation tactics, so it's similar. He also has a no-kill rule, so there's a lot of things that are really similar. And anyway, so what's happened is with the Green Lantern Corps out of commission, there have been several other groups that have risen up and are trying to kind of exert their dominance by making everybody feel safe. So no matter what their ulterior motives are, the idea is that they're trying to make it look like they can protect people, and then once their will is law, they can do anything they want to. And that is potentially interesting. So that's basically what this is about. And like I said, I didn't dislike this. I guess I'm giving somewhat of a lukewarm review for this, mostly just as a taste thing. I don't know that I would necessarily keep reading after this. I'm not the biggest Green Lantern fan in the first place, of course, but it's an interesting place to put Hal Jordan. We're certainly doing a lot of crazy status quo, mix up things right now with DC. You've got an amnesiac Bruce Wayne. You have a Superman who has a totally different power set and is going around in jeans and a t-shirt again. And you've got Hal Jordan, who instead of a ring has a gauntlet. And I really think that they should do a new series with that called Green Gauntlet. But anyway, so a lot of what DC is doing right now is just let's do things that have never been done before and try to make everything different. And sometimes it's working and sometimes it's not. And this is a case where I'm kind of on the fence about it. I'm kind of, as I said, kind of lukewarm on that. All right, let's get away from DC crazy annual land, shall we? And we move on to Marvel. The one Marvel book I have this week is yet another of these 50th anniversary of S.H.I.E.L.D. Issues. I think that's what this is supposed to, although, well, this being a variant edition, or issue, excuse me, it doesn't have that banner at the top, but it reads like a one-shot. I'm pretty sure that's what this is. Anyway, so this is the Cavalry #1, and it's and it says above it, "Don't call her the Cavalry." That's kind of the tagline, because of course, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that's kind of her tagline thing. She hates being called the Cavalry, and I kind of like how that's played here. It's, I mean, I don't want to say explored because it's not really about her backstory or telling us a lot of stuff about her so much as kind of looking just at her philosophy versus the way she's perceived. Once again, a lot of books this week about perceptions versus the truth. So what we have here is Melinda May. It's a really simple story. It's a good one-and-done story. It's really easy to pick up and read. And of these S.H.I.E.L.D. 50th anniversary things, I'd put it right in the middle. I think it's pretty decent. And I've liked these for the most part. So anyway, what this is about is she is training some new cadets, some new recruits to S.H.I.E.L.D., and there's this really tight team of cadets that really have a good sense of teamwork, we find, as this goes along. And she is putting them through their paces, and she's of course real tough on them, and they have that same perception that everybody in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. used to have of Melinda May, which is she's the Cavalry. She's a one-man, one-woman army. She can do anything, has done anything, and is potentially dangerous and horrifying. And she likes to have that kind of reputation. But I like the internal monologue where we kind of get to see a little bit of her humanity, and she still thinks really cold and methodical, but every now and again, of course, inside of her own thoughts, stuff that she would never say to anybody kind of comes out. And that is, I think, really well reflected in just the situation also with the cadets, where at first it's just a paintball war, and then all of a sudden these crazy robot attack dogs show up that remind me a little bit of Skippy the Robot Dog from The Tick, and they're a wolf pack, and they operate like a wolf pack, and again, they're cold and methodical, and they're just machines. And these these cadets work really well together, and they have that same kind of unemotional thing. When they take out the dogs, they don't whine, they don't complain, they don't seem scared. May is impressed by that, and but the reason they ultimately win out is because they're caring human beings that give a crap about the rest of the people in their pack, and so so I kind of like this idea of Melinda May being the Cavalry, that she is like helping a team, and that she understands what it means to be a team, but you wouldn't know that looking at her, and she seems a little bit more like those dogs, but of course she's more of a lone wolf, but ultimately actually cares about everybody else on her team. It's pretty good. I like that it doesn't beat us over the head with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. references. It basically just takes this character, plants her firmly into the Marvel comic book universe, and Coulson makes an appearance at the end. But other than that, it pretty much feels like a new comic book version of her that is certainly faithful to the TV show counterpart. It's really weird, all this adapting screen stuff to comics, and is a thing that I have been questioning some, but overall I enjoyed that issue. Next up, we go to a book from Image called From Under Mountains. This is a kind of sword and sorcery fantasy story with kind of an Arabian setting, and this is written by Claire Gibson with art by Sloan Lessing. I can't read my own handwriting. Excuse me. Sloan Long. Anyway, so this is, this starts off as feeling like kind of a typical princess that's going to have to marry the prince but wants something more and never has gotten to travel and has a thirst for exploration, that kind of story. It's Princess Jasmine, basically, and again, in kind of an Arabian setting. It certainly has potential to be more than the sum of its parts, and of course, as I always say, you know, every story has kind of been told, and it's all about the new spin and perspective that you put on it, putting yourself in it and making it something new. This didn't do that for me yet with the first issue so much, except for toward the end there is an ethereal kind of non-corporeal assassin that might be really interesting. There's a horse named Sarek. And I wondered if this person was a Star Trek fan, or if Sarek is a name that actually came from someplace else, and Sarek in Star Trek was named after that. But I've never seen anything else named Sarek, and thought that was kind of fun. Anyway, the big thing that kind of took me out with this, I mean, I think that it's well paced. The story is definitely has a clear direction and knows what it's doing, and is certainly competently laid out. But the art really took me out. It's just not quite sufficiently striking for my taste. It's got a lot of lack of backgrounds, a lot of solid color backgrounds. It's really sketchy and under detailed. There's a big full page spread that's also the back of the book that is just the top of a mountain, or what's supposed to be the top of a mountain. It's just a few lines making the top of a triangle, and then black, and that's all it is. You can say it's minimal, but for my taste, it was kind of, and even for this material, it was kind of too minimal for me, and that's an issue that I know a lot of people have had with some Image stories, or some Image comics, where the stories will be well told, but the art kind of is lacking. And man, that's a thing that Image being where they are right now, and how popular they've been lately in a lot of their creator-owned stuff. I feel like the art and things like this could just be ramped up a little bit and be a little bit more impressive. And that's not to say that you can't have really sketchy stuff like this. I've come to really appreciate the X-Files comics, and they are incredibly understated and sketchy like that. But it feels more like a stylistic thing rather than just simply. I hate to say it like this, but somebody could have just worked a little bit harder on this art. That might sound super harsh. I just didn't really care for the art in this book. Anyway, that's what I have to say about that. Moving right along, here is a book from a studio that I have never heard of. This is Void of Heroes. This is from Cosmic Times Comics, and this is written and I don't want to say illustrated because I think that this was that this art is probably computer generated art, but so rendered or illustrated, both written and rendered by Topi Calusto and Tapio Matinen. I probably completely botched those names. Anyway, I was really surprised by how much I liked this. This is a 4-part miniseries. I will probably get all of this. I was very impressed. This is incredibly atmospheric, and I found it really compelling. Basically, what we have here is yet another post-apocalyptic future. But wait, don't skip ahead yet. It's this really dark, depressing world that no longer has humans in it at all. You don't know that, well, if you ignore the cover. You don't know that for the first several pages until you realize that our protagonist that has been giving us an internal monologue all along, talking about how he's just trying to survive and hoping he can find some kind of a range weapon so that he can keep himself alive, but isn't really sure what the point is anymore because there's kind of nothing but darkness now on the planet, and that it's perpetual darkness all the time and nobody knows why. Anyway, you're reading that for several pages just looking at landscape. You're looking at this abandoned, like I think it's like a sewage, not like a sewage plant. It's some kind of a plant, and then some other terrain for a while, and then all of a sudden it's this robot, and you discover that this incredibly sad, tragic, very human-seeming character that has somewhat of a mechanical and poetic way of speaking all at the same time somehow, is actually just this robot that looks a lot like an Ed 209 from RoboCop, but apparently has like urban camo. You can't really see that inside the book, but it's on the cover. And it's just trying to survive, but and I guess it has its survival instincts, but that, as they might be with a human being, are at odds with this urge to deactivate itself, to commit suicide, because there's nothing to live for. What is the point? So it's a character that is trying to survive while at the same time trying to find purpose. It's a very simple story about a character in the dark that discovers light and is too curious and too now hopeful to allow himself to die, and I found it gripping. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. The entire thing is told through pictures with internal monologue. It doesn't feel overwritten. There's a couple places here and there where there's some lines I would have cut, but you know, it's minor. It's not a perfect thing. But like I said, I thought it was really atmospheric, and I was surprisingly taken in by it. I think the title is great. This is a world that is devoid of heroes, and then we discover that we might have a void because it's dark of heroes, and it makes me wonder where there might actually be people or robots rather that end up proving themselves to be heroes. I loved this. I can't wait for the next issue, and it's a thing that I'm sure a lot of people will not know about and won't see, and so do yourself a favor and check this out if you are a big science fiction person. And the last thing I want to talk about this time is Doctor Who, the 10th Doctor, Year Chapter 2, Number 1. This is published by Titan Comics, who got the license away from IDW just a year ago, and this is written by Nick Badsis, with art by Eleonora, I think, Carlini. Yes, Eleonora Carlini, excuse me. My handwriting is atrocious sometimes. Eleonora Carlini, and I was so impressed with this. I was kind of sad for IDW when they lost the license. Now, I don't know exactly how that worked out, if they didn't want it anymore for some reason. Like, I can't imagine that that's the case, so I thought it sold pretty well for them. But anyway, I'm not sure what the circumstances were when they lost the license, and I didn't really know much about Titan, so I thought it was kind of sad when that happened. But reading this, I'm actually really interested to go back and look at some more of their Doctor Who stuff and maybe read more of this. I like the idea that they're publishing several Doctor Who books at once, and that you get to pick your favorite Doctor, or read all of them if you want to. But that if you have, a favorite Doctor of of current Who, of recent Who, and that Doctor's not around anymore, you can still get some new stories. And I guess they just did a big event where they crossed them all over, and I haven't read that. I don't know if it's any good, but this references it. Actually, this doesn't really reference it. It just mentions it in the inside cover as a thing that just happened recently. Anyway, this is thoughtful and really, and quirky like Doctor Who always is, but so imaginative, and so much about the awe and the wonder, and it's everything I like about Doctor Who. The premise here is that the Doctor and his current companion, who I'm pretty sure is a made-up companion for these books. If not, don't lynch me. I'm a very casual Who fan. I don't know, but I've not seen her before. It's Gabby Gonzalez, and she and the Doctor go to this extraordinary planet that has a human colony living amongst a species that you can't see and wouldn't even know was there, but that you can feel with most of the rest of your senses. I guess all the rest of your senses. And they are the Shanti, which is very easy to remember because that is the name of Mohinder's sister from Heroes. So I will have no problem remembering the name of the species. And they are a species that exists as music. Absolutely fascinating. They're like telepaths, but you don't just hear their thoughts. You experience them with all of your senses, but primarily hearing. And as I said, they exist as music, and they're of course drawn visually here. But the idea is that it's sort of like what you would imagine them to look like if you could see them. And then what also kind of makes that work is that there's a character in this who has this really fascinating disease where she experiences things from the wrong senses. So she tastes things you should hear, and she can see things or that you might feel or whatever, but she can see things that you usually would hear. So she actually can see these things, and that kind of gives us an out for being able to see these creatures. And what has happened is that there is this virus that turns out to actually be something that was intentionally planted by I guess a hostile sect of these of the Shanti, this xenophobic sect that doesn't want to have anything to do with humans and doesn't like that we're there. That has planted this virus and has turned a bunch of the Shanti. I guess it's somewhat of a mystery if they're completely to blame for this, but anyway, it's turned, this story's not finished yet, it turns a bunch of the Shanti into these big scary wraith creatures like you would expect in a regular Doctor Who episode. I really like how this uses the medium and justifies this as a comic book. The idea of reading of looking at a visual medium that's about music, and that it's about all the different senses, but the only sense you can use to get the story is your eyes, and then you have to imagine the rest of it, makes a lot of sense to me. Now, if you were to turn this into a television episode, a composer and a sound designer could have a field day with how to effectively create this species, and it would be really neat to see how that's done. But I like getting to use my imagination and reading a comic, you know, where again you only have your eyes to go on, and of course, you know, it's less limiting because you get pictures than say a book might be, you know, to a degree, but it depends on how you look at it, because, you know, if you think of your own imagination as a sense, then it's not. But anyway, but I like this idea that this is all about the limits of human perception, and all you have to go on is your eyes, and you have to imagine everything else. I think that's really cool. But again, it's about it's this really thoughtful story about opening your mind to possibilities, and that making you less limited. And I love this idea that the close-minded people in this story that are causing all these problems are some of the music species that that has a natural, broader range of senses, and I just think that's really compelling. So anyway, the one thing I don't like about it is the companion seems to be oddly unsympathetic toward the end, when she, after the Doctor is getting involved in trying to save this world, and what he calls an attempted three-pronged genocide, because there's another species involved in this that I won't even get into that also is kind of amorphous and is similar to the and kind of forms a symbiotic relationship, I guess, with the music species. She says, I thought we were gonna just go on vacation, and it's like he's trying to save this whole world. I thought that was a little bit odd and off-putting. Overall, though, I loved this, and the thing I'm most impressed with by it is that it gets so much done in one issue, and it is only a two-part story. I felt like halfway through that this might actually finish up in this one issue and be just a complete one-and-done story that I would find completely gripping and would totally work. But it's actually even more fleshed out than that. It's in 2 issues, and once again, comparing it to some IDW stuff, they have had a history sometimes. They're better about it now, but they have had a history before, and still it happens with their Star Trek comics, I think, of doing these 2-issue stories and not getting nearly enough story told, and feeling like they need more space, more real estate. This is amazingly dense, feels like half a Doctor Who episode. I'm so impressed with this. If you're a Doctor Who fan, you owe it to yourself to pick this up. Especially if you're a big Tennant fan, and I think he gets the voice for Tennant totally right in this. Anyway, that is all I've got for you this time. Thanks as always for watching the #1 show. Sure hope you enjoyed it, and I will be back again very shortly with another one before we get to the brand new books for the week that you're going to be watching these videos. And once again, if you're in the Kansas City area ever, be sure to check out my favorite comic shop, Elite Comics, in Overland Park. And if you'd ever like to send anything for me to review on the Comic Vault, you can always send things to our P.O. Box. That's P.O. Box 4733, Overland Park, Kansas 66204. I'm Captain Logan. Happy reading.